a single day, January 13th, 2006, specifically in the city of Acasuso, near the Argentine capital Buenos Aires, a major armed robbery took place at one of the biggest banks in Argentina. The gang stormed into the bank and took the employees and customers as hostages. After 15 minutes, they felt like they had made a mistake and needed to escape. One of them walked out carrying a hostage, only to be surprised by a number of police officers surrounding the place. He had no choice but to go back inside the bank and wait for what seemed to be a doomed fate along with his partners. Of course, you believe that was all a coincidence, but let me tell you, everything was planned. Just like the professor in the series who calculated every detail. The leader here was running the smartest heist in history, the one that was later called the heist of the century. Now it's time to dive right into the story. If you're the kind of person who likes to fall asleep to stories, get comfy, grab your blanket and relax. But if you're still awake and full of energy, grab a snack and a drink and enjoy the story. I'm Hamza and let's get started. Today I'm going to tell you about the heist of the century, considered the smartest robbery in human history. Every single detail in this story, no matter how small, was carefully planned and calculated. Of course, the plan itself could succeed, but the fate of the gang and what actually happened to them was completely unexpected. The story began one day when Fernando Araujo went to see his psychiatrist. He told him that he was planning to do something that would bring back vitality and passion to his life. The doctor asked, "What is this thing you want to do?" Araujo replied, "Now that I'm 43, the only thing that might make me feel young again, and make me believe I can do anything I want, is robbing a bank." Of course, the doctor laughed and said, "That idea is impossible." But Araujo insisted, "No, it's not impossible. I've actually been planning to rob a bank for a while." Their discussion went on for a long time, and they didn't reach any conclusion. But one thing you need to know, Araujo wasn't lying. He really intended to rob a bank. The doctor, until the very last moment, couldn't believe it. He saw Araujo as a man tired and frustrated with life, just talking nonsense. What made Araujo remarkable? He was extremely intelligent, working as a legal procedures clerk, while also being a theater actor. When he decided to rob a bank, he left everything behind and dedicated himself entirely to planning the mission. It all began with Araujo riding his motorcycle every day, cruising the streets of the city of Acasuso in Argentina. The bank that caught his attention the most was Banco Rio, a huge and very well-known bank. 80% of Argentinians had their money in that bank, and of course the bank offered a special service for its customers, safety deposit boxes, where you could store anything valuable you wanted, gold, jewelry, diamonds, cash, whatever you wished. That's when Araujo moved on to the next step, figuring out the smartest way to rob this bank. He had two options in front of him. The first option, go in with guns, pull off a classic armed robbery, and steal from the teller's cash drawers, but that method wasn't worth it at all. Why? Because according to banking regulations, the maximum amount of money a teller can have in their drawer is only $10,000, and if you manage to get just one drawer, that's barely anything. Totally not worth the risk. Not to mention the escape, which would basically be impossible. Within minutes the police would surround the entire area, so the danger would be insanely high, with a very small reward. The second option was to break into the bank at night, reach the safety deposit vault, and take everything inside. Now that plan had a massive payoff, the ultimate dream for any thief. But how could he possibly reach the vault that easily? Well, let's say he dug a tunnel and somehow made it all the way to the vault. Security cameras covered every inch of that place, and those cameras were directly connected to the city's police, meaning the moment something suspicious was detected, the alarm would go off instantly. On top of that, there were heat sensors capable of detecting any movement inside or around the vault. It sounded impossible. But despite all that, he didn't give up. He started thinking of a way to get into the bank and rob the vault without being detected. The first thing that came to his mind was digging a tunnel beneath the bank, a tunnel that would lead him straight to the vault. He would go in, take everything inside, and leave through that same tunnel. But digging a tunnel like the one he imagined, totally unrealistic. It would require heavy equipment, months of work, and sooner or later someone would notice. So he thought of another idea. He would rent a warehouse, a shop, a house, any property close to the bank. And from inside that place, he would dig down and start tunneling from there, all the way to the vault. He wanted to steal everything inside, but soon realized that a plan like that would cost a fortune. Not only that, he would need to dig a 220-meter tunnel just to reach the vault. Totally unrealistic. So what's the solution? The solution revealed itself by pure coincidence. Araujo had a real estate agent who wanted to show him an apartment near the bank. He hopped on his motorcycle and drove over to check the place out. On his way, he noticed something. The road leading to the bank, right beside it, was full of manhole covers. He counted the distance between each one, only 10 meters apart. That meant the main sewer line ran directly in front of the bank. So instead of digging a giant tunnel from some distant property, he could simply enter through the sewer system and reach the bank from below. He followed the covers along the road until he reached a large square opening, taller than 2.5 meters. Beneath it was a huge water channel. No need to search for a property, no need to dig a tunnel. The tunnel already existed. All he had to do was get inside the sewer and measure the distance from the vault to the sewer line. He discovered that the main sewer opening was only 160 meters away from the bank, just about a 2-minute walk underground, and he'd be right beneath the vault. He went inside the tunnel, examined everything carefully, and thought, this is it. This is exactly what I've been looking for. After that, he stayed home for 35 days, planning every single detail of how he would enter the bank. And once the plan was ready, he moved on to the second phase, building a team. He knew he couldn't do this alone. One of the first people he thought of was his friend Sebastian Bolster, an electronic and mechanical engineer, a guy who had absolutely nothing to do with crime or robberies, but to Araujo, that was actually perfect. He didn't want his first partner in this heist to be a criminal. Plus, Sebastian had one very important trait. He hated banks, especially Banco Rio. The reason was that his father and family had lost all their property when the biggest bank in Argentina went bankrupt. And when they finally managed to gather their money again and deposited it in Banco Rio, the bank seized their funds and even sold their house because they missed a few loan payments. So for him, this opportunity came walking right to his doorstep, a chance to get revenge on the bank that ruined his family's life. The first thing Araujo and Sebastian did was agree to change their names. They decided to call each other by nicknames so they would get used to them as the team grew. Araujo became the leader and Sebastian became the engineer. Remember those names, because from now on everything would be done using these nicknames. The leader and the engineer went to the bank's location, climbed down into the sewer system and studied the space, measuring how far it was from the bank. They spent a whole week working on that. Then, the engineer went into the bank pretending he had 6 kilograms of gold he wanted to deposit. The staff took him down to the vault and showed him the safety deposit boxes. He even asked the employee to open one in front of him so he could see the security level. Everything he did was recorded using a hidden camera inside his clothes. After that visit, he went back and reviewed the footage with the leader. They studied every single detail and tried to figure out how to bypass each security measure one step at a time. But they faced a major problem. They needed a lot of money to buy the equipment required to break into the main vault and all the safety boxes inside. That's when the leader reached out to the third member of the crew, a man nicknamed the Doctor. To this day, no one knows his real name or identity. He was a highly educated man with a respected social status, but at the same time, he knew a lot of criminals and was involved in some shady business deals. That's why the leader reminded everyone to stick to the rule. The blueprint the muscle brought was 100% accurate, and once they studied the maps, they were able to pinpoint the exact location of the vault. The plan was simple: dig a tunnel that would reach the vault, get inside, empty everything, and then leave through the tunnel, all at night. They went down into the sewers, loaded in their tools, and started digging upward from the ceiling of the sewage line, heading directly toward the vault. The distance to cover was 30 meters, and they estimated it would take 2 months to complete. During that time, the engineer focused on a completely different challenge. How could they enter the vault without triggering the thermal motion sensors? There was one solution, expensive but the best possible one: special suits designed to block body heat from being detected by the sensors. After designing the suits, he bought a thermal camera to test them and the experiment worked perfectly. But there was a major problem. The suits were extremely heavy and stiff. Sure, they could get inside unnoticed, but moving around inside the vault would be almost impossible. It was like wearing a full astronaut suit. They could barely move, let alone rob a bank. That's when the leader stepped in and presented a genius idea, but one that was completely insane in every sense of the word. The leader said, "Why don't we enter through the bank's front door, but escape through the tunnel?" He explained the idea, and everyone agreed. You'll see exactly how that played out later. But let's keep the story in order. By switching the entry point to the main entrance and using the tunnel only to escape, the thermal suit idea was no longer needed, but now they needed something else, something the leader had refused from the beginning: weapons. He was totally against bringing guns into the bank for two reasons. One, he didn't want anyone to get hurt. His whole goal was to bring back excitement and passion into his life, not to scare or kill innocent people. Two, if the plan failed and they were caught with weapons, their crime would be much more serious. But with the new plan, he had no other choice. They needed weapons. So the leader asked the financier to get them guns, but a very special kind, something you'll discover at the end of the video. The financier brought exactly what was requested. The leader was so thrilled with the weapons that he invited everyone out for dinner, his treat. And now they reached the final stage: how to escape the bank. How were they going to escape from the bank? As we said, they were going to escape through the tunnel. But the problem they faced was that if they decided to go down into the tunnel and come out from the sewer opening located 160 meters away from the bank, the police would definitely reach that spot before them, since it would be obvious where they'd come out from. So they had to think of a genius plan that wouldn't cross the police's minds. And since the leader had every detail calculated, he told them, the best place to come out is one of the manhole covers on the road. Everyone objected, telling him they would get exposed and caught immediately. That's when he revealed the second part of the plan. After they entered the vault and filled those large cloth bags with everything inside it, they would throw the bags down into the tunnel they had dug, and once they finished, they would leave the vault through the tunnel and escape into the sewer system. There, rescue boats would be waiting for them. They would sail in the opposite direction of the main sewer exit and head toward a specific manhole cover that is 200 meters away from the bank. A vintage Volkswagen car would be parked right on top of that manhole. The car had an opening underneath so they could climb directly into it. Of course, the sixth member of the gang, the one they nicknamed the Kid, would be waiting in the car. He would be the one driving them away. They brought the exact type of car needed and created the hidden opening, working on it at the financier's house. Everything was happening right in front of the financier's wife, who they trusted completely and believed she would never reveal anything. While they were working on the car, the engineer was focused on a new device called the cannon. This device was basically a large pressure tool designed to break the small vault locks. As soon as they entered the vault, they would use this device to break the locks. The device was 100% effective and capable of breaking any lock within just 7 seconds. The big day finally arrived, and their genius plan began on January 13th, 2006. An old Volkswagen car parked in front of the bank entrance. Four people stepped out of it wearing gray business suits, masked and wearing black hats. The strange thing was that they all had long blonde hair. That was the leader's idea. They wore blonde wigs so that even their hair color wouldn't be recognized. The ones entering the bank were the leader, the doctor, the aggressive one, and the financier. As for the engineer, he was already inside the sewers. He entered through the tunnel until he reached the vault wall, bringing with him the compressor, hammer, and equipment needed to break through the wall. As soon as he received the signal that his friends had entered the bank, he began working on the wall, but the goal was to weaken it without fully breaking through until the leader gave the order. Inside the bank, the four masked men took control and held everyone hostage. Their movements and behavior were strange, making everyone believe they were dangerous, yet at the same time giving the impression that they were scared because their plan had failed. After 15 minutes, the police surrounded the bank and it was time for the next step. The financier took one of the hostages and walked outside, pretending he wanted to escape to their car, acting shocked by the police presence, then rushed back inside terrified. They all behaved as if the plan had gone wrong and they desperately wanted to escape through the main door. But there was one major problem for the gang: the security guard in the surveillance room. He was still inside monitoring the cameras, informing the police of every move the gang made, so the leader and the aggressive member agreed on a plan to scare the guard and force him out of the room. The leader ran toward the guard and yelled, "Every extra minute you stay in there, we will kill a hostage!" The aggressive one grabbed a hostage violently and stormed toward the surveillance room, putting a gun to her head. The leader shouted to the guard, "I promise you, if you come out of the room, I will let you out of the bank and hand you over to the police, and I promise no hostage will be harmed." The guard agreed, especially after the hostage begged him to comply. He came out, and the leader took his phone, telling him to let the police chief speak to them using the guard's phone. We're trapped in here and need to get out, but we want to make sure our lives are safe. Indeed, the guard came out with one of the hostages and explained the situation to the police. They told the officers that the gang members were scared, realized they had been exposed, and were trapped inside, desperate to get out by any means and worried for their lives. Meanwhile, the leader ran with the doctor to the vault and gave the signal to the engineer to break through the wall and enter the vault. Of course, the guard had been watching everything on the cameras. If the wall had been broken before the guard left the surveillance room, their plan would have been exposed and they would have been in serious trouble, but the leader had calculated every detail. The engineer waited patiently, doing nothing until he got the signal. Once the guard left and the cameras were completely disabled, the engineer broke through the wall. They opened the cloth bags and entered the vault with the lock-breaking device. They began breaking every safety deposit box and stealing everything inside. The ones actually carrying out the theft were the leader, the doctor, and the engineer. Meanwhile, the muscle and the financier were responsible for controlling the hostages, monitoring the police, and buying time to ensure the robbery could be completed. At one point, the muscle stepped out of the main bank entrance holding the guard's phone and signaled to the police chief. The chief called, and the muscle explained, "We broke into the bank to steal and escape, but we didn't manage to get out in time. You arrived before we could leave, so now we don't know what to do." The police chief noticed the muscle clearly visible through the bank windows. He was calmly talking to the chief, legs resting on the desk, looking completely unafraid. The chief asked if he had any prior convictions. The muscle said he had just been released from prison and didn't care if he went back. He just wanted to make sure no hostages were harmed. He said, "We'll discuss with our team and let you know what our conditions are." The police chief agreed and gave them 1 hour. During that hour, the muscle went to the leader to check if everything was going according to plan, and he was shocked. The three inside had already emptied half of the vault into the cloth bags. He was thrilled. He couldn't believe how well the plan was going. He asked the team if they needed more time. They said, "Yeah, we need 1 more hour and everything will be ready." They waited until the first hour passed. Then the muscle called the police chief again and said, "Honestly, we're extremely nervous. We want a safe way to surrender. But first, we want to make things right with the hostages. We want to do something nice for them. We want you to bring us pizza, for us and the hostages. We'll all eat together and then we'll surrender along with them. If you don't accept, we'll have no choice but to end our lives and the lives of the hostages with us." The police chief agreed immediately. He wanted to avoid responsibility for anything going wrong, and if he agreed to their demand for pizza from a specific restaurant located 40 minutes away, that meant an extra 40 minutes bought for the thieves. While the pizza was on the way, the team inside was wrapping up the final stage. The doctor ran out of the vault and told the muscle and the financier, "It's done. Time to pull out." The financier ordered all hostages to lie face down on the floor. They warned them, "Anyone who moves gets shot." Meanwhile, the robbers slowly backed toward the vault entrance. The doctor and the engineer descended into the tunnel below and waited to receive the loot. The leader, the financier, and the muscle began dropping the heavy bags full of stolen valuables down the shaft. Below, the doctor and engineer loaded them onto inflatable boats. Once everything was packed and ready, the final touches began. They placed a large timed bomb at the vault door, and in front of it, a red cloth on the ground with all of their weapons neatly laid on top of it. Then they slipped into the tunnel and escaped. They followed the sewer route to the manhole where the kid was waiting. They climbed up, loaded everything into the old Volkswagen, and drove straight to the financier's house. They parked inside the garage, got into the house, and immediately turned on the TV, eager to see what the police were dealing with now. The surprise was that the police were still standing outside. The gang had already stormed the bank, stolen everything, and returned home, and the police had no idea. 2 hours after their escape, the police chief decided to raid the bank. The real shock: the gang had completely vanished, no trace at all. And here's the funny part: the police chief had called the financier's phone 30 times. If he had answered, it would have been fine, but he didn't. The chief just barged into the bank out of frustration. The plan had succeeded 100%. They divided the money among themselves, and each member went their separate way. Their agreement: never meet again under any circumstances. Meanwhile, the police were busy dealing with the bomb on the vault door. The surprise: the bomb was actually a toy. Its only purpose had been to buy them extra time. And the story behind the weapons left in the bank: also toys. Even in that detail, everything was planned. So, if the plan had failed and they were caught, the fake weapons wouldn't be a legal problem. The leader had calculated every single detail. The plan had worked perfectly, and everyone returned to their normal lives, except for the financier, who later discovered something strange at home. One day he came back to find that his wife had taken 3 bags of money worth around $100,000. When he asked why, she said, "That's my share from the operation. I needed some things I wanted to buy." Sources confirmed that this really happened. That's exactly what his wife said. Imagine his rage. He argued with her, threatened that she would expose the plan, and if she did, it would ruin everything. In the end, he stayed quiet, left the house, and took the remaining bags of money to hide them somewhere else. He returned home that evening, everything intact. He saw his wife waiting for him, and they began to argue. She told him, "You're acting like this because you became rich, and now you want to abandon me, and I won't allow it." The next morning, as soon as it was light, she quietly went to the police station and told them everything. The financier was arrested first, followed by the leader, the engineer, and the muscle. As for the doctor and the kid, no one knows their whereabouts. They had already left the country, even the stolen money, and to this day its total value is unknown. All sources confirm that the gang never returned anything they had stolen. The bank was the only one affected, and it eventually compensated all its clients. The gang members were sentenced to varying prison terms ranging from 9 to 15 years, yet none of them stayed in prison for more than 3 years. Why? Because they had become hugely popular among the people. Everyone was demanding their release. More than one lawyer defended them, and several organizations petitioned for them. In the end, they were released, and their story became unbelievable. Imagine this: after their release, their story was turned into a comedy action film, and their heist was recorded as the smartest robbery in human history, later called the heist of the century. That's where our story ends for today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a nice comment. This was Hamza. See you next time.